hearing from you later in our agenda.
Thank you.
So welcome. Just a reminder for public participation, when you come up to the table, please state your name and your address. And we are limited to 3 minutes. And if you could stick to that, that would be great. Thank you. We're going to start with Deepa Javieri, followed by John Harris.
Members of the board, thank you. My name is Deepa Javieri. I live at 7 Larkspur Lane, Greenwich, Connecticut. I'm a mother of 3 and Connecticut ambassador to psychologist Jonathan Haidt, author of The Anxious Generation. I'm here to urge you to prepare and advocate for comprehensive statewide bell-to-bell phone-free schools legislation in the 25-26 session and to offer our organization's help in this critically important task. First, I thank this board and Governor Lamont for providing early leadership on this matter. The data tells us it is now imperative to take further action. According to a London School of Economics study of 130,000 15 to 16-year-old students, which was published in May, removing phones boosted exam scores 14% for low achievers. The overall gains were driven almost entirely by the bottom 60% of performers. Frontline educators see the damage and support restrictions. In a recent survey of 3,000 NEA members, 83% support a bell-to-bell ban. As the data accumulates, other states are taking action and Connecticut is falling behind. At least 24 states now prohibit or strongly restrict phones at school. As you know, several critical education bills here in Connecticut stalled this legislative session, leaving districts to fend for themselves. The legislature's failure to act punishes our neediest students. Well-resourced suburbs have already made significant moves. Just last night, Darien and Fairfield boards of ed approved K-12 bell-to-bell bans. We see a different story in Bridgeport and Hartford. As Bridgeport Superintendent Dr. Avery fights valiantly to close a massive funding gap, finding pouch funding is unlikely to be a priority. Dr. Torres Rodriguez, Superintendent of Hartford, is on the record saying funding is a constraint for successful pouch pilots to be scaled across her district. If legislation is not passed, well-resourced districts will follow the data and find the funding, while our most vulnerable students will fall further and further behind. The Anxious Generation movement advocates for legislation that contains 5 essential components. Number 1, physical separation of devices on arrival. Don't ask educators to police policies. Number 2, bell-to-bell coverage every school day. To see reductions in social media use and cyberbullying, students must not have access to phones during free times. Number 3, no digital mandates for coursework or parent contact. Number 4, only 2 exceptions, documented medical devices and special ed plans. Number 5, universal enforcement, all grades, all public schools. So what about the cost? We estimate that universal pouching would cost $10.5 million, a drop in the bucket of the $4.5 billion the state sends to public schools each year. Considering improved outcomes, the return on this investment far outweigh the cost. In closing, you are either an exhausted parent living through this, or you have friends and family who are. I suspect you feel in your gut that something must be done. This isn't an esoteric question of curriculum, but a visceral one impacting every classroom and family in the state. Let's put Connecticut's children and not their phones at the center of every classroom. Thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Good morning, board members. My name is John Harris. I live at 4 Kirtland Avenue in Chester. I have served as the principal of Naugatuck High School for the past 7 years, and during the past school year, we adopted a bell-to-bell ban on phones in our building. I'm here today to speak in support of bills under consideration which would prohibit the use of phones by students during the school day, especially SB 580, which would require the Department of Ed to establish a model policy for districts to follow. Here today as an educator whose district has adopted such a prohibition with great success. I'm here as a local board member whose constituents are increasingly vocal about their support for such a policy, and as a father who's fighting to keep the childhoods of his sons and daughter as phone-free as possible. You've undoubtedly heard testimony and considered the growing body of research showing the harm that phones and social media apps cause to children's social, emotional, and academic development. I will not spend much time on that today. I believe it's become quite clear that the damage which these devices cause outweighs any perceived benefit. One concern about phone-free school policies that I hear frequently from parents is that of safety. That in this unfortunate time we live in, where tragedies happen in schools, students having access to a phone in case of emergency is an absolute need. I would contend that, in fact, those devices make our schools less safe. In Naugatuck, we began prohibiting phones during the school day at the beginning of this past school year in both our middle and our high schools. During our first month of school, our high school and middle school were targeted by near simultaneous swatting calls indicating imminent armed threats to our buildings. Both myself and my colleague at the middle school put our buildings into lockdowns and engaged our emergency protocols in cooperation with the Naugatuck Police Department. Police arrived within minutes, secured our buildings, and returned schools back to normal operation in less than half an hour. During our debrief, we reflected on the impact that no phones made on the ability of the police to do their jobs quickly and with precision. The police shared feedback that in similar past situations, emergency responders have had to contend with misinformation on social media and in news outlets, creating parent and community traffic which slowed their response times, made securing buildings more difficult. Because students did not have access to their phones, these obstacles were removed. Beyond that, we reflected with teachers about how the lack of devices made students more aware of the moment, more responsive to directions, more prepared to unpack the situation after. Because students were not on their phones during this emergency, what could have been a major disruption turned into a minor issue that was resolved quickly. While the swatting call turned out to be a hoax, our experience was that a lack of phones created a situation where our emergency responders could do their jobs efficiently and effectively without additional obstacles. And we would want that to be the case in any crisis situation. Earlier this year, the National Association of School Resource Officers released a letter of support for all schools to prohibit bell-to-bell use of phones, and that letter is attached to my testimony. I could continue on about day-to-day safety, how beyond the crisis situations, restricting access to phones made our school culture more positive, reduced discipline referrals, and has sharply curtailed physical altercations and instances of bullying, but I know I'm nearing the end of my time. I strongly urge the board to support prohibitions to student cell phone use during the school day. In my experience, that prohibition has helped to keep our kids healthier, happier, safer, and learning more. Thank you.
Julia Phillips, followed by Giselle Funciani.
Good morning. My name is Julia Phillips. I live at 33 Sheffield Lane in Madison, Connecticut, and I am here today to read a statement from a neighbor and colleague with the parent-led organization Madison Youth Unplugged. She is a physician in New Haven. As a parent and pediatrician here in Connecticut, I strongly support school phone policies. Research is clear that phone use during school hours is a distraction for student learning and in-person social interaction. Furthermore, it is a source of bullying through texts or photos and videos taken without a student's permission during the school day. The majority of U.S. teachers also report more difficulty teaching effectively when students are distracted by their phones. In my own practice, I see many patients whose frequent phone use is often linked to feelings of anxiety, depression, and poor sleep. We discussed that prolonged phone use can crowd out important face-to-face social interactions, activities, and sports with friends, teachers, mentors, coaches, and family. We also discussed that fostering these positive relationships through these face-to-face experiences is important for their long-term well-being, both physical and mental. School phone policies can help to support these breaks from phones and create a culture of screen time awareness for students, their families, and school staff. Research about effective implementation of school phone policies in the United States, middle and high schools, is currently ongoing, and hopefully more results will be available soon. In the meantime, the American Academy of Pediatrics Center for Excellence in Social Media and Youth Mental Health recommends the following guidance. Experts recommend that phone policies take into account the views of multiple impacted groups, including caregivers, students, teachers, school mental health providers, school nurses, and other school health staff, as well as school administrators. Caregivers should be provided support in how to help students follow the policy. For example, changing settings on the child or teen's device to block unnecessary distractions and avoiding texting or calling the student during the school day. Teachers should have support from administrators in knowing the best ways to implement a policy and how to respond when students aren't following it. Children and teens with disabilities who use technology for communication or to assist with academic work should have appropriate technology access outlined in their 504 plan or IEP. Students with health needs should be able to access their phone or other technology needs to manage their care, for example, diabetes devices like glucose sensors and insulin pumps. Consequences for violating the policy should be very clear, communicated in writing and on the school website, and sent home to students and caregivers. Ideally, consequences should be constructive, for example, meeting with school social workers and addressing academic struggles rather than punitive, for example, suspension. If caregivers are worried that they won't be able to contact their child during school hours, for example, with a family emergency or change in pickup plans, make sure the school communicates alternative ways families can quickly get in touch with students, for example, through the main office. Ways for students to contact their caregivers should also be provided. Some students may struggle more than others in separating from their phones. Teachers and school mental health providers can use this as a digital self-reflection opportunity. Why is it so hard to put our technology down? What are we afraid of missing? And identify the underlying reasons kids are seeking escape during class time. For students who use music or meditation apps to calm their emotions during the school day, caregivers can work with the school on alternate ways to access these apps, for example, through a school-issued device or teaching other self-regulation strategies. Encourage boundaries around school-issued devices too, so that students don't just switch their distractions to a different screen. I appreciate this opportunity to provide testimony on this important topic. Please feel free to contact me with any questions. Sincerely, Dr. Kathleen Sweck. Thank you.
If you have a written testimony, you can just leave it right on the table and it will be picked up after. Is Giselle? Okay, Giselle.
Good morning, Chair and members of the board. My name is Giselle Funchen. I live at 28 Gilbert Lane in Burlington, Connecticut. I am a mom and a rising high school senior and a rising 7th grader. I am also a nurse, Screen Strong ambassador in Connecticut and New York City. I stand before you today to share my support regarding a bell-to-bell statewide phone-free school policy. I kindly ask for your support with advocacy and continued conversations until all Connecticut children in public schools are receiving a distraction-free school day. In February of 2025, a study from Seattle Children's Research Center reported that on average, 1.5 hours of the school day is spent on phones for kids 13 to 18 years old. This equates to 25% of their school day. If we do the math with 180 days per year and about 239,000 enrolled students aged 13 to 18, this projects an estimated 64,530,000 wasted hours during taxpayer-funded school days in Connecticut by waiting another year. Those are hours spent on video games, doom scrolling, watching inappropriate material, and more instead of talking, laughing, making eye contact, and even being bored. Much more valuable skills for kids to build their social emotional selves, which is an equally important part of education. This is not just an issue of distraction. It is a misuse of public funding and worse, a profound loss of learning opportunity. Each school day, students with this model policy will enjoy 6 to 7 hours free from the addictive pull of their devices, as well as the drama, predators, drug dealers, dangerous challenges, and cyberbullying they would face. Students will have 6 to 7 hours to focus on their academic and personal growth, giving them a distinct advantage over their peers in states that do not enact the model policies. These students will possess the academic and soft skills that employers are seeking and currently complain are lacking in recent grads. Every student, regardless of their zip code, background, school district, or state, deserves the opportunity to experience the benefits of 6 to 7 hours of uninterrupted focus and genuine social interaction. When we leave this decision entirely to local control, we risk creating a system where only well-resourced schools, those with engaged parent communities, strong leadership, and sufficient funding take meaningful action. Meanwhile, other students are left behind. To alleviate this inequity and ensure all Connecticut students are well prepared for college and employment, Please encourage the amendment of the current policies to provide students with the benefits of a first bell to last bell phone and personal electronic device and social media-free learning environment. In summary, please ensure that Connecticut students will not be left behind academically and socially, and taxpayer dollars are no longer wasted. Please support a policy that gives our students a minimum 6-hour break from distracting, addictive products that do not belong in our schools. I appreciate your time and consideration. Thank you.
Dr. Califano, followed by Emily Fernandez.
Good morning. My name is Dr. Claudia Califano. My address is 7 Adirondack Lane in Guilford, Connecticut. I am an MD, a board-certified child, adolescent, and adult psychiatrist. I'm a professor at the Yale Child Study Center, a member of the Medical Executive Committee at Yale New Haven Hospital, and I have a full-time private practice in Connecticut. Without fail, parents who have come to consult me out of concern regarding the dysregulation of their children have in every one of those instances come to understand that, the dysregulation occurred when they were removing the screens from their children. The impact is not just social, this is neurological. We know that there are critical points of brain development through infancy, childhood, and adolescence, all the way through our 20s. This is a period of time that we are particularly sensitive in regard to addiction. Technology is a potential and potent form of addiction. It is disrupting the development of all of our children. This is apparent to me and my colleagues as we work to support the mental, emotional, and academic development of children. We are alarmed. I often say to my patients that you cannot have two thoughts at once. You cannot have an anxious thought simultaneously with a more comforting thought. This concept is equally fundamental in the context of technology. If a child or adolescent is paying attention to their phone, they cannot attend to any other thing. The sheer hours that are now being consumed by technology are dramatically detracting from the development of our children. There is a disruption in learning, social relatedness, and sleep. There is an increase in anxiety and depression. Studies show that screen use can actually induce symptoms of ADHD in children who otherwise would not have the diagnosis. Getting some control over this destruction is in your hands. Currently, there is a study called the Adolescent Brain Cognitive Development, or ABCD study, the largest long-term study of brain development in the United States. It has 21 research sites across the country, including Yale. This study recognizes the central role that technology exposure is having on the neurodevelopment of children. Imaging studies suggest that screen time is associated with structural and functional changes in the brain. Daily screen exposure mediates the association between reward sensitivity and the development of neural connections in the front of the brain, which impacts our capacity to act more thoughtfully and less impulsively. Sustained exposure to this kind of input has the highest likelihood of overwhelming our brain's capacity to process what is occurring around us. If you would like our children to be paying attention in school, smartphones are completely contradictory to that goal. There is simply no debate about this. We are in the midst of an unplanned, disturbing social experiment. The greatest victims here are children whose brains have heightened vulnerability and capacity for growth, change, resilience, and strength are exceedingly affected by technology. To neglect these facts is harmful and will impact the entire life trajectory of our children. Thank you very much for your time.
Emily Fernandez at 679 Ridgeberry Road in Ridgefield. I'm a mom and a voter, and I encourage this board to support a policy that prohibits the use of personal smart devices bell to bell in grades K through 12, and no policy short of that. That will ensure a safe, healthy learning environment consistent with this board's comprehensive education plan and provide a safe school climate consistent with CGS Title 10. Toward that end, I would like to recognize the efforts of this board, and in particular, Commissioner Russell Tucker, for their prior efforts at recognizing that this is an issue and for their anticipated future support in getting this done. I am not going to address why smartphones don't belong in school. You just heard that, and based on past recorded meetings, I think you know or should know that. I will address why a policy prohibiting smart devices bell to bell K through 12 should be done at a state level and now. Local boards are overwhelmed. Drafting a policy prohibiting smart devices is not mandatory, so it's not a priority. And some may think it's not politically expedient. Example, in Ridgefield, there is a lot of community support, and our board elicited expert medical testimony on the record recommending a ban through 12th grade, and there is no ban in Ridgefield. The state must lead by recommending such a policy now to empower our local districts to enact meaningful change with the clarity, consistency, and legitimacy that comes with a state mandate. And the good news is the drafting has already been done. Attached here for the board is model legislation language that sets forth data-driven gold star standard policies crafted by experts in the field. Or you could look at the 14 other Connecticut towns that already have bans in place, or you could look at the 12 other states that already have statewide bans in place for language. If you won't do the right thing by banning phones, or if you won't do the ban phones because it's the right thing, do it to reduce legal risks and costs. Connecticut law is clear that schools are required to ensure a safe school climate, and that includes through protocols to prevent and intervene in cyberbullying. That's CSG 10-222D and G. That's attached here as well for your review. Schools may increasingly face negligent supervision claims if cyberbullying occurs on school premises during school hours. The legal threshold to pierce sovereign immunity may already be met in some cases. These student devices are making a record, so they may already contain evidence of patterns of evidence of cyberbullying that may be admissible in court. Further, the recorded meetings of this board, other boards, and the state legislature could be used in courts to establish knowledge or foreseeability of injury. This should not be news. Strategies to sue schools are on plaintiffs' attorneys' websites throughout this state, and it costs upwards of $50,000 to defend and win one of these lawsuits before a trial. Further, insurance coverage may soon be conditioned on having effective policies to prevent exactly this, so just do it now. Don't allow our precious resources to be squandered away. Moreover, taxpayer funds were never intended to cover students spending time on their personal devices during school hours. So I implore this board to propose a statewide policy prohibiting smart devices during school for all grades using the model legislation language here. If anyone's opposed, please state so on the record in your position and why you believe that's consistent with your comprehensive education policy as well as with Title 10. This is your moment for leadership and action. We support you. The community, the voters, prospective residents, and students are watching. Thank you.
The next speaker, I really can't read. The last name is S-A-N.